I've had a very hard time distinguishing between the spiritual and the psychological. And I'd be curious what you think about that. Is there a way in your mind that you distinguish between the psychological and the spiritual?
Yeah, I think the way I see it is that the field of psychology is actually comprised of a handful of different subfields, and they have waxed and waned in terms of popularity over the decades and over a century of the development of the field. And right now, I would say when I was getting my degree in psychology, which a bachelor's, I'll just flat out make sure your audience knows, doesn't really prepare you for much. It prepares you to get a master's or a PhD, which I might go back and do. I got a master's in business instead. That was more practical for me. But one thing that was my experience was that it was almost exclusively dedicated to the field of neuroscience, cognitive science, behavioral psychology, these different fields, a much more materialist, naturalist perspective on things. The root of psychology actually comes from shamanic practices, where ritual elders of particular tribes and societies would guide people through life transitions or help them be healed from certain mental illnesses or just psychological trauma.
So real quick, you're saying that initially, so psychology actually nowadays has a very materialistic sort of bent to it. It presupposes that human beings are just meat computers processing information, and there's a certain level of psychology that views things that way. But you're saying is that there's another side of psychology that is more based in a less materialistic point of view and actually is ultimately rooted, like you're saying, in shamanic tradition and religion?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that psychology is the sanitization of what people have been doing for generations and generations of centuries
within
past.
religion.
Within religion. In fact, I'm forgetting who said it, but I've been reading a handful of books, just trying to dive deeper into this side of things. But yeah, it really comes down to the idea that nowadays, without religion necessarily, in a agnostic or atheist society, psychologists and the people of academia are effectively secular priests and shamans. That they serve the same role of spiritual and ethical navigation.
Well, I look at someone like
in this way, just to answer your question,
go ahead.
yeah, it comes down to. I was just going to say, just to be clear, I believe that psychology now is just an outgrowth of what has always been there in terms of spirituality.
So yeah, so if you were to separate the materialistic side of it, the rest of it is, I mean, it can't be a science at that point. If you're dealing with an aspect of human nature that no longer is talking about the physical, then you have to be talking about something approximating the soul or spirituality.
There's this, I think, a famous speech, a commencement speech from Hugh Nibley back in the day. He gave one on leaders and managers, and he goes on for like 15 minutes about, because it's a commencement speech, so he's like wearing his PhD, like doctorate paraphernalia, and he goes on about like dissecting how each piece of this is like a piece of the garment of a false priesthood, and he goes in on how academia is a false priesthood. It's rooted in a false power. It's a pretending of the power of God. And I am not an anti-intellectual. I have a bachelor's and a graduate degree. There are plenty of people, I think, out there who are genuine anti-intellectuals. And there's a lot we can learn. And there's a lot we can learn from people who are trained, and those fields can be infiltrated by popular philosophy and popular doctrines.
If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and hit the subscribe button. Also, if you want more content, including the podcast, go to thoughtful-faith.com. Thanks for watching.